Good afternoon, colleagues. Imina 35 na legislature. Guahan is back from recess. And before we get into the consideration of the daily file, Majority Leader, Vice Speaker, if I may, can we ask to move to excuse those members not present for voting on the bill?
Sitas Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to make the motion to excuse members not present for today's voting.
On that motion, any objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. Colleagues, we are now on item 18, consideration of the daily file. Bill number 198-35 COR. Clerks, please read the title.
Bill number 198-35 LS, introduced by Sabina Flores Perez, an act to adopt the rules and regulations for the Recycling Revolving Fund as transmitted by the Guam Environmental Protection Agency.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Senator Castro. Senator Castro excused. Senator Lee. Senator Lee, aye. Senator Marsh-Titano. Senator Marsh-Titano excused. Senator Moylan. Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Munya. Senator Munya, aye. Speaker Munya Barnes.
Hongan.
Speaker Munya Barnes, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson. Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, aye. Senator Ragel. Senator Ragel, aye. Senator San Augustine. Senator San Augustine, aye. Senator Shelton. Senator Shelton, aye. Senator Taitagui. Senator Taitagui excused. Senator Pito Terlahi. Senator Pito Terlahi, aye. Senator Therese Terlahi. Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Torres. Senator Torres, aye.
Colleagues, bill number 198-35 COR received 12 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 excused absences. Bill number 198-35 COR is duly passed by this body. Oh, 198 LS. Senator Joe San Augustine, I'll recognize you on bill number 76, please.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to pass Bill 76.
I apologize, Senator.
Okay.
I duly apologize. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you're recognized to send us back into second reading. Notwithstanding, send us back.
Sitas Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make the motion that we go back into the second reading file.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, I'll go ahead and recognize you. Consigue mo na por favor.
Madam Speaker, Bill 76-35 COR just got online, and I'd like to allow my colleagues an opportunity to go over it. So I'd like to pass it on file, and then we'll get back to it at the
Just
end
to
of the
set
week.
it aside.
Yeah. Set it aside then.
Pass on file. On that motion by Senator San Augustine to pass on file without any objections, motion carries. Senator Sabina Perez on bill number 81-35 COR.
Sitas Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill 81-35 COR on the third reading file and to debate upon it.
and to discuss, right?
Discuss, yeah.
On that, please proceed. On that motion, please proceed.
Mrs. Masi. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on Bill 81-35. I also wish to thank my co-sponsors on this measure, Senator Therese Terlahi and Senator Tello Taitigui. Bill 81-35 aims to accomplish two goals: to save the government of Guam money and to protect the environment. The bill achieves these aims by requiring that only energy-efficient products be purchased by the government of Guam whenever available and practicable. Energy-efficient products are defined by the bill as any product approved by the U.S. EPA Energy Star program or the U.S. Department of Energy Federal Energy Management Program, or any product that meets or exceeds these standards as determined by the Director of Guam Energy Office in advance of its procurement. These programs certify products as being highly energy efficient only after meeting rigorous quality, performance, and energy saving standards. They make it easier for consumers and businesses to purchase products that both save them money and protect the environment. Unfortunately, energy-efficient products are often overlooked when government of Guam is forced to choose the lowest cost option, even though these more efficient products are cheaper in the long run due to energy savings. And while it's possible to create bid specifications to be written to include energy-efficient products, this would need to be done on a case-by-case basis. And there's no guarantee that every GovGuam entity will understand and incorporate such standards when developing procurement documents. As such, Bill 8135 establishes a government-wide mandate that only energy-efficient products be purchased. The bill also provides careful exemptions in the case that an energy-efficient product is not available competitively, it fails to meet performance requirements, or if it's unavailable in a reasonable time frame. Following the public hearing, the bill was amended to include Guam Energy Office's role in validating energy-efficient products, an appeals process through the Guam EPA Board in case such disagreements arise, and a 3-month effective date following enactment. Since 2005, the federal government has had a similar mandate to purchase only energy-efficient products. It's estimated that the U.S. federal government saves $200 million in energy cost annually thanks to this mandate. When taking into account both the local and state governments, the U.S. public sector cumulatively saves over $1 billion annually in energy costs, thanks to the energy mandates such as this one. Additionally, the findings of a recent study by GPA show the savings from using energy-efficient products resulted in approximately a 70% reduction in energy consumption. Those savings could potentially free up funds to support the direct services of government agencies, thus increasing the functionality of government. The bill was further amended in committee to allow for a waiver should the overall life cycle cost of purchasing a product not be cost effective. However, it's not anticipated that such an exemption will be used, as energy-efficient products often pay for their increased costs in short order, as evidenced by the over $1 billion saved annually. And as these products become more available, it's potential that these products may actually be more competitive in price. In addition to saving the government money, Bill 81-35 protects our environment. Energy-efficient products reduce carbon emissions and help free our island from its dependence on imported petroleum. By leveraging GovGuam's purchasing power, we can incentivize the local market to shift toward energy-efficient products, thus benefiting all consumers. In the wake of the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit, Bill 81-35 is an important measure in line with the new global initiative of increasing energy efficiency that is necessary to achieve carbon neutrality or net zero carbon emissions to prevent global warming above the 1.5 degree increase above pre-industrial levels. If we want our island to embrace environmental sustainability, GovGuam must first role model best practices. And by implementing a government-wide mandate to purchase energy-efficient products, we will help protect our environment while also saving money. Situas Masi.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Is there anyone on the main motion? Senator Mary Torres, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a question for the author of this bill, the retiring speaker, if she will so yield. In looking at the committee report, what I didn't see that I was wondering about was with energy efficient products, it doesn't just include technology. It also includes other products, I believe, like windows and fixtures and doors and the like. And what I would like to ask is, we also know that in the procurement of products for construction products or renovation, there are times where the Buy America Act requirement can be waived for Guam projects because of the cost effectiveness of realizing those building or renovation projects. So my question is, how do those mandates, how do you reconcile those sorts of things where where the bottom line for those products that are not specifically technology or energy fixtures, where they include other non-electrical types of considerations, how do we reconcile that with the waivers on Buy America Act and things like that, where because we are in Guam and where we have the ability to procure products from Asia, for example, oftentimes those other types of restrictions and guidelines are waived in the interest of cost. So how would we reconcile that with this bill, for example? And I hope I'm clear in my question.
Senator Perez, would you like to yield to Senator Torres's inquiry? Please proceed.
Yes, I can yield to that question. So I think it's important to have a certification program that is accepted by U.S. standards. In regards to building materials, there is a bill forthcoming that would address non-appliance to help with the energy efficiency of a building. I think some of the issue too is as far as funding goes, and I think this bill does allow for cost effectiveness. So in the bill itself, should an agency find that the product is not competitively available, and that speaks to cost issues. So yes, there are cases where these new products may be just way expensive, too expensive for government budgets. And in those cases, exemptions can be provided according to this bill. So this mandate does allow for that sort of outlet in the case that something is costly. In regards to Asian products, I still, this bill basically does require the U.S. standards to apply. I hope that answers the question.
Senator Torres, are you okay with that?
I am. Yeah, I guess in all cases, what is being procured, there's always a relevance. And I do see on page 3 where those sorts of requests for waivers can be entertained. But I just thought, that it was worth bringing up because we have mandate on top of mandates that sometimes we need to balance against one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mary. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Sabina, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To reiterate the opening statement, I think this bill 8135 is an important bill because it combines not only protection of our environment, but it also provides the ability for government to reduce its costs through life cycle or through energy savings. I think it's in line with a lot of what's happening in the world globally, which relates to the need to reduce our carbon emissions by the year 2050, and I think now it's even down to 2030, in order to prevent global warming to go beyond 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So, you know, it does make a lot of sense environmentally and economically. It does provide, it's basically a mechanism for people in government to be able to purchase environmentally eco-friendly products. Because right now, currently, we're going for the lowest bid, which is not necessarily, you know, eco-friendly. But it does provide that mechanism. But it also does address cost effectiveness as well, and provides an outlet in case cost is an issue, as well as specifications are not met. So it's a thoughtful bill, and I think it would help the government in the long run and help leverage the savings to go towards direct services. And I do appreciate my colleagues' support in advance. Suzuis Masi.
Senator Paris, would you like to move it to the third reading voting file?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill 81-35 COR on the third reading file with a recommendation to pass.
To the voting on the motion to move 81-35 COR to the voting file without any objection. Motion carries. We're going to take a moment's recess.
We're back from recess. Speaker Barnes, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, I would ask for consideration to set aside Bill number 86-35 COR to, I mean, not to set aside, but to just pass on file. I'm working closely with legal on an amendment to further tighten the intent of this bill, and it should be ready. So if we can just pass it on file and entertain the next bill.
There has been a motion made to pass Bill number 86-35 on file and to entertain it after we discuss Bill number 93-35. Is there any objection to the motion? No objection? Motion passes. Speaker Barnes.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill number 93-35 COR, as amended by the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land, and Justice, introduced by myself, I'd ask that it be moved to the third reading, and if I can briefly discuss the merits of the bill.
Please proceed.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I first want to take the time to thank the chairperson on lands, the good senator from Jotnia, for hearing Bill number 93-35 COR and allowing me to submit my statement to the committee in my absence. This bill, Madam Speaker, is an act relative to rezoning Lot 1107-1-3 new, located in the municipality of Mingilao, from a single-family dwelling R1 to a commercial C for the purpose of establishing a kidney dialysis clinic and medically related commercial facility. Madam Speaker, this bill was introduced because at that time there continued to be a lack of quorum with the Guam Land Use Commission to approve zone changes when this bill was entertained. I understand the importance of the role of the Guam Land Use Commission, and I note that for the record. However, I believe it is still important that we act expediently on land issues affecting our community members. Madam Speaker, this bill will allow the landowner of this property to use his land to construct a dialysis center, and currently the property is zoned R1, and this bill will change the zoning to a commercial C zoning. We believe that this is a very good use of the property. For many of us here on Guam, we know that it's not easy to say, but there are many dialysis patients missing or being late to an appointment, and sometimes even causing life-threatening issues because the reach to get in to a center of this magnitude is not always necessarily close, and having a dialysis service close to this residential area will be beneficial to our community, both in the central and southern areas. I want to ask my colleagues, like I said, I'd be really brief, to help me support the efforts, as this has been vetted with the community, and there is acceptance to have this clinic for kidney dialysis introduced into the village of Mingilao. So I hope my colleagues will support the efforts, and I entertain any comments on this bill moving forward. Sizus Masi, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on Bill 93-35 CR.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Is there anyone that would like to speak on Bill number 93-35? Senator Chalahi, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Bill number 93, as reported out by our committee, it would rezone a property in Manila from R1 to commercial. And the intent of this rezoning is to allow the owners, which is Dr. Safa, to create or to build a dialysis center. That's the intent, Madam Speaker. So the bill, as you know, legislative rezonings, they bypass the regular application, Guam Land Use Commission process. And I just wanted to state for the record that when I first received this bill, I confirmed with the Guam Land Use Commission that they did have enough members for quorum, and that this bill had not, that this applicant had not applied for any action by the Land Use Commission. So I just want to say that on their behalf, that it wasn't that they had delayed action on this matter at all. So the bill did undergo, because we have a statute that requires it to undergo a review by the same agencies that would review all rezoning applications at the Land Use Commission. And so those agencies gave their input on the bill. And so those are all contained in the committee report. And for the most part, I would say generally, you know, that the agencies pointed out what they would require in this project when it comes up for permitting, except for the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, which pointed out that this rezoning would be contrary to the land use plan that we have in place right now for Central and North, or for Central. So this is Manila, so this is Central. And it's just because these are, you know, areas over the aquifer, and I think this land, I want to read I don't want to put words in their mouth, so I just want to say what they said. They disapproved of the rezone request as a development of intended property use is contrary to the land use plan. Sorry, I don't have the other details that. I think, if I recall correctly, it's because it's a designated like conservation area. But, and this is one of the things that the Bureau of Statistics and Plans and our coastal zone management agencies have been trying to, you know, get through to us, that we have these designated conservation areas all over our maps and our plans, but we really are not forcing landowners to stick to those types of uses. And this is a good example, I guess, of, you know, exceptions that are being made, and it's because they feel like, you know, I agree with the author, the intent is to make medical services more available for people in this area and make it convenient for them. In particular, this is dialysis. So this is one of those things that most of dialysis patients are going at least 3 times a week. And we've got clinics right now operating 24/7. That means we have that many dialysis patients on Guam that they have to come in 3 times a week, and the clinics are booked 24/7. And it's actually quite appalling, because if you walk into the clinic in Sinajana, for example, and see the number of chairs that are available, it's quite big. I mean, you know, quite a lot of chairs. And so it really just, in my mind, reemphasizes this crisis that we really are in on Guam in regards to diabetes. This is what the insurance companies keep telling us, that we have to look at diabetes, and we have, you know, our agencies and our nonprofits looking at diabetes, but we have to make a bigger dent in the prevention of diabetes. So this clinic, of course, is going to help address the treatment of those who are currently suffering with kidney failure and in need of dialysis, but we just have to, as a community, be reminded that the need for these dialysis clinics is driven by this real crisis that we are having in regards to diabetes here in Guam. I also just want to put on the record that bypassing the variance procedures that the Guam Land Use Commission normally takes, it doesn't require certain things that the Land Use Commission is currently requiring. One of them is that the adjacent landowners or the landowners within 500 feet radius are going to be directly notified by the Land Use Commission. So in that case, this did not occur. And the other thing is that the detailed plans for the building were not provided to the Department of Land Management or the agencies, and they pretty much, this is, I guess, one of those chicken and the egg scenarios. So the detailed plans were not provided, they're not made yet, and but the owners of the property want to ensure that the zoning is going to be, to allow for them to, incur that cost, to incur the cost of having the plans made and all the other, details that go along with that, and the costs. So I think that the lack of the detailed plans at the time, or while the agencies were reviewing it, may also have, not given them much to comment on, except to say their normal, we're going to require drainage, we're going to require all of their normal processes in the permitting stage. So I'm very hopeful that they are going to be very diligent when it comes to permitting, and so that the protections and even those concerns by the Bureau of Statistics and Plans as to, water drainage and preserving elements of conservation in this planning will occur prior to the building permits being issued. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Torres, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I echo the sentiments of the retirement speaker in terms of the concern that was raised by Bureau of Statistics and Plans in the committee report. And I'm looking at it right now, and the things that I want to point out is that the area in question is property located on the Manila watershed. What is concerning here is the director of Bureau of Statistics and Plans talks about the land use and the North and Central Guam Land Use Plan that was approved as part of the Guam Comprehensive Development Plan. The director notes in his testimony provided to the committee that the Bureau is concerned of the direct and cumulative impacts to the northern Guam lens aquifer, and therefore the request to rezone this property and its intended use is contrary to the elements of the North and Central Guam Land Use Plan. Further, towards the end of the testimony, under the caption Recommendation and Decision, Director Taitano states that the bill fails to provide any substantive arguments for deviating from the future land use designations. Pursuant to Public Law 9626, Appendix A, the Bureau hereby recommends disapproval of this request. I think I bring these points up because in our decision of whether to vote in favor of this bill, which essentially takes away from the process of going through a normal rezoning, where the public comment is extended and thorough, this going through the legislative process essentially just leapfrogs that. But Director Taitano brought up a point that I just want to reiterate for the record so that we're all cognizant. And he writes, as government officials, it is our primary responsibility to ensure that growth and development are done in a manner that does not harm public health or safety, but works to promote the public welfare and convenience in a manner that is in balance with the environment in order to preserve and sustain the unique culture, traditions, and beauty of our island for future generations. What is very difficult in considering this testimony from the Director of Bureau of Statistics and Plans is the testimony that was provided at the public hearing and the many people who came out and testified in favor of this bill. So, of course, we've got two sides to the equation. One is the public need for such a facility, in contrast to what has been identified as contrary to sound development plans within an area that is located on the Mangilaw watershed. And so I find that if it were in the public interest, the true public interest, the best course would be to go through the normal zoning process so that these concerns can be vetted and all assurances for the sound development can be presented openly and publicly. And that is my concern with this bill, Madam Speaker. While we know what would satisfy a community need in terms of a dialysis facility that is accessible to an area that is underserved, we also find ourselves in a situation where we're placing it in an area where prior assessments, environmental assessments suggest that this is not the area where this type of a facility is best placed. So I look forward to other comments by the body because this is that sort of thing where we have to rectify. Do we as a legislature leapfrog and establish that this is the way it's going to be, or do we follow the processes that we set up for rezoning and allow others to come in and weigh in so that there is certainty about the direction that the community wants, weighing in community health needs versus environmental considerations and safeguards. So that is just my general comment, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the motion? Speaker Barnes, you're welcome to close.
Jesus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to close on this bill. I want to share for the record, just based on the previous testimony, that I had a discussion with Mr. Tyrone Titano, the director of BSP, and he shared with me his consideration and update, but after speaking and sidebarring with the oversight chair on lands, she shared with me that the letter that was supposed to, the update that was supposed to be given by the director of BSP, she did not get. So I want to say that in the efforts of working with the ARC Review, Land Management, BSP, and all the stakeholders, there was an update given by Mr. Borja, who said that he gives a letter to the oversight chair, and it says, Buenas and half a day provided for your review and your committee's review in the Land Zoning Considerations Report Bill on 93-35. Pursuant to Public Law 31-157, Section 2110, any bill that seeks to designate a particular zoning for any real property shall not be placed on the legislative session agenda until a land zoning consideration report has been issued by the Department of Land Management. As required by the Land Zoning Consideration Report, shall be prepared by the Director of Land Management, the Department of the Department of Land Management, the Department of Land Planning Division, and the proposed zoning property in question is greater than the R2 designation zone. The head of Department's Application Review Committee, which is ARC, the report shall be prepared in consultation with other permitting governmental departments and agencies and the property owner as deemed necessary by the department. And that was signed by Mr. Borja. And he further talks, Madam Speaker, about the facts and the chronological facts and analysis to this. And with the conclusion and recommendation, it states that the medical facility is necessary and in response to the increasing health care demands of the island, residents and clients in the southern part of Guam and those employed in the living area in the general areas especially stand to gain increased convenience. The intended use of Lot 1107-13 new in Mingila solely for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a renal dialysis clinic for the community and its surrounding neighbors provides convenience by bringing such services closer to residents from the central and southern villages. The proposed land use is compatible with nearby and adjacent uses. Namely, they talk about the American Medical Clinic to the north and the Mingila Public Health Center, which is just over a mile southwest of the property. So it is for these reasons that we are in support of the legislative proposal and recommend that Bill 93-35 with amendments to reimburse the Department of Land Management be passed and that the kidney dialysis clinic be constructed and operated. I want to note that for the record, Madam Speaker, that it was in and I will take responsibility for the updated letter not being provided, but we can append that to the journal as we get the copy from the director who shared with me that there was a reconsideration based on all the reviews. And I'm literally hoping that my colleagues support this effort. We know that with the increasing incidences of diabetes and kidney failures and everything around happening within our residents, that this center is important, and providing that facility for our central and southern recipients would be highly recommended. And I'm hoping that my colleagues support those efforts, Madam Speaker. So at this time, I'd ask that we move this bill to the third reading voting file. But thank my colleagues for the concern of what they brought up. And I appreciate it, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
There has been a motion to move Bill number 93-35 into the third reading voting file. Are there any objections? No objections? Bill number 93-35 is moved to the third reading voting file. Madam Speaker, we'll go into a quick recess. We are back from recess. Senator Lee, you are recognized.
Sujusmasi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to move Bill 128-35 into the third reading file and discuss it.
There has been a motion to move Bill number 128-35 into the third reading file for discussion. Any objections? No objections? Senator Lee, please proceed.
Sujusmasi, Madam Speaker. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues who have co-sponsored this piece of legislation, Madam Speaker, in support of our island's workforce, namely Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Mary Camacho Torres, and Senator Will Castro. In addition, I'd like to thank our professionals at the Department of Labor for their continued hard work in administering this program, the participating companies who provide pathways to prosperity, and to the many apprentices all across our island who are helping to breathe new life into our island's skilled labor industry and paving the way for a new generation of skilled workers. Madam Speaker, Bill 128-35 LS seeks to extend the program tax credit for 5 years to 2024. In addition, it also seeks to establish a 2.5% administration fee to ensure efficiency in apprenticeship activities and programs at the Guam Department of Labor. This program allows participating companies to offset the cost of training skilled workers with tax credits. These tax credits are worth up to 50% of the qualified expenses associated with training an employee. This program works because tax credits lessen the financial risk of on-the-job training, and it provides the necessary education for candidates who show promise. Bill 128 simply seeks to modernize a good law to great. As the law stands, the program tax credit will end in December 2019, leaving as many as 487 apprentices without the tools they need to finish the job. Madam Speaker, we simply can't have a strong economy without skilled labor. Whether it's construction, healthcare, or telecommunications, we need partnerships with the private sector that keep our people working. With 487 apprentices now with employable skills, the program shouldn't be stopped. It should be stepped up. Bill 128 also includes new standards and mechanisms in place to ensure that only current companies are rewarded and to protect from the runaway erosion of funds. As a way to contain revenue offset by the GRAP tax credit, Bill 128 provides that companies already issued a qualifying certificate will remain ineligible to participate. Credits cannot be claimed for training costs more than 3 years old. And training costs paid by the local or federal government continue to be ineligible to be claimed for tax credits. Lastly, Madam Speaker, tax credits can only be carried forward into other years as allowed by existing procedures of the Department of Revenue and Taxation. At the bill's public hearing on August 1st, the community's support for this bill was apparent. Former apprentices, local businesses, government leaders, and members of the Guam Contractors Association, the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, and the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association expressed unanimous support for this measure to continue to develop our island's workforce. Nate Timenglobe, Chief People Officer at Docomo Pacific, voiced his support by saying, and I quote, "As a company, we've gone all in with this program. This program is a win-win-win. One, the employee wins. They get free training and development and can grow their potential. Two, the company wins. We get better trained employees and we have incentives to participate. And three, the island wins. The local workforce is developed, which benefits our island as a whole." Madam Speaker, our people need jobs that they can raise their families on, and that begins with skilled labor. We need to ensure that our island economy continues to grow, that our people have the necessary skills they need in order to maintain and build our workforce, and quite simply, extend the life of a program that works. Since its inception, this public-private partnership has resulted in many workers gaining valuable skills and earning more money for their families. We have an opportunity to expand a homegrown, skilled workforce, help more people find good careers, and help more companies invest in employees who show promise. Let's come together to strengthen the foundations of our community, Madam Speaker, and help more Guamanians, entrepreneurs and employees alike, to prosper. Sidusmasi.
you, Judge Masi. Senator Lee, is there anyone that would like to speak on the motion? Madam Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this. I do have an amendment that I'd like to proffer on this bill, but if you can just give me a moment's recess so I can confer with the author of the legislation to make sure that I'm putting the amendment in the right area. So if you can just give me a moment's recess, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We will take a quick recess. We are back from recess. Madam Speaker, you are recognized.
Situ Ismasi, Madam Speaker, for giving us the opportunity for that moment's recess so I can confer with the author of the legislation. And I just want to say at this time I don't have any proffered amendments, but I will say to this august body that I'm very appreciative to the sponsor for this bill and for bringing this forward, and that I'm in support of this bill. Our island is severely lacking skilled workers, and it is important that our island look into initiatives to grow our workforce in various trades, including the construction trade. And there are many programs out there attempting to find solutions to continue to develop our island without relying too much on our small skilled of construction workforce. And I want to share with you that this includes sweat equity programs where homeowners contribute their labor in building homes, Madam Speaker. And I just want to say that as we look at this program, to supporting the administrations of the Guam Registered Apprenticeship Program and extending the tax credit sunset provision of said program for that additional time period of 5 years, I just want to say that in the efforts of trying to keep our skilled workers, trying to train our skilled workers, trying to advocate, this is a good bill, and I stand in support of it. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I thank the author and the co-sponsors for attempting and advocating to move this bill forward. Sijo Smasi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the motion? Okay. Senator Tlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, and as the previous senators have stated, the testimony at the public hearing was all in favor of the bill with very little suggestions on edits as to the fee. But this is actually, so this bill would continue a program that was actually put in place in 2006. At least in statute in 2006 by then Speaker Ampinko, Eddie Calvo, and Mark Forbes, those senators. And we see the foresight that they had back then, that, and of course we've pretty much been in this position for many years now, that we are short on labor in various areas. And so the goal is to increase the skilled labor workforce by granting a waiver of business privilege taxes to these companies who hire apprentices. The apprentices are then required to stay with the company for every year of the apprenticeship program that they participate in. And so we heard from some companies of the success stories, and that they are very reliant, in fact, on the graduates of these apprenticeship programs, or that they currently have apprentices in the program. So I think, yes, we are benefiting these companies, the government of Guam, by forgoing the business privilege tax, but we are also, building up our workforce here so that we can just grow our economy, Madam Speaker. The fiscal note of the bill shows, the impact on the business privilege taxes of this program over the years, and the most recent year impact was about $4.7 million in business privilege tax that we are waiving. I'm not sure if this was accounted for in the projections during our FY 2020 budget deliberations, this approximately $4.7 million, or if we had counted that as revenue that we would be receiving in the business privilege taxes. But I do agree with the testimony at the public hearing that this is a win-win for Guam, as we have given the discretion to the Department of Labor, and the Director of Labor rather, and he's supposed to, after a public hearing, decide what are the priority areas for Guam that these apprentices are needed in. And so I just wanted to point that out also. So this occupational list of priorities is coming from the Director of Labor, of course, you know, with the guidance of the Federal Department of Labor and what apprentices they will actually do themselves, but hopefully with priorities set for Guam that make sense for Guam. So I'd just like to thank the author of the bill and state my support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Situ Smasi, Senator Therese. Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone else? Vice Speaker Nelson, then Legislative Secretary. Please proceed.
Sijos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill number 128-35. I want to thank the sponsor for extending this apprenticeship program. There are many benefits that come from it, especially in the fields of technology. It also allows credit for many of our companies, but not only that, it provides an avenue for laborers to have some experience while they're going through school, and so that when they are done with their school, they can move into the workforce with an easy transition. And this is very much needed. This is a job producer. The apprenticeship program also prepares us for what we would face in the workplace. I just have one question for the sponsor. The question would be, is this bill inclusive that every company may have the opportunity to move the apprenticeship program forward via a tax credit?
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Regine Lee, would you like to answer?
Sijos Masi, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague for the question. Almost every company on Guam would be eligible, but I just want to be clear that in an attempt to contain the revenue offset by the GRAP tax credit, Bill 128 provides that companies who already have an existing qualifying certificate are not eligible. They're already receiving a qualifying certificate and benefits that way. Also, credits can't be claimed for training costs that are more than 3 years old. So if companies are trying to move forward training that they provided for their employees 4 years ago, that would not be eligible. And also training costs that are paid by the local or federal government that continue to be ineligible for these tax credits. So there are some very specific ways that certain companies and certain training costs would not be covered by this bill, but every other entity or industry would be open. And actually, in terms of the listing that was alluded to earlier, it's important to note that we made some changes to the bill as well to include occupations in the fields of chamorro cultural practices, human resource development, office technology, medical coding and billing, information technology, website coding and development, finance and accounting, cosmetology, automotive engineering, industrial work, construction, and technical trades. So, Madam Speaker, again, we're just really trying to anticipate growth in the future and provide skilled work for existing needs of our island. Sijos Masi, I hope that answers the question.
Sijos Masi, Senator Lee. Vice Speaker, you're recognized. Does that suffice?
Sijos Masi, Madam Speaker, I'm very appreciative for that response. It really shows that we are targeting small businesses, and although this is a tax credit that may impact revenues to the government, I think that we should also start to look for other avenues. For example, the transshipment fuel that we can perhaps start taxing at the port rather than waiting for it to get taxed at the pump because we're not able to track that. So maybe we can balance out if we're doing this. This is something good for the community. We will see the impact. We will see our people being able to find jobs and apprenticeship programs for them to grow. So I just in the future that we also look for a way to balance those areas, like, for example, in transshipment of fuel. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Si Jules Masi, Vice Speaker Nelson. Anybody else on the main motion? Senator, Legislative Secretary, you are. Senator Sabina Perez, I will recognize you.
Suzu's Masi, Madam Speaker. I have a question for the sponsor of the bill.
If you can go ahead, state your question, please.
Yes, so I'm reading this bill. I'm in full support of expanding apprenticeship programs, but I noticed that there was a removal of some of the checks and balances when it comes to determining the list of occupations that will benefit from the tax credits. So on line 27 on page 5, it says that the director shall consider new program applicants and agreements, regardless of whether a public hearing is conducted. And then also on the following page, it removes oversight from the governor and the legislature. So the director has greater power in amending the lists that can qualify for tax credits. And I guess my question is the rationale behind that.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Lee, would you like to answer that inquiry?
Yes, Madam Speaker, Sujos Maasi, to my colleague for the question. I think it's really, it's a good question, and I just want to reiterate that the committee considered testimony from the public hearing regarding the impracticability of the existing method to adopt an annual approved occupational listing, and the testimony that we received back from Department of Labor and many of our other stakeholders was to replace this impractical bureaucratic process or method with a more streamlined process. So namely allowing Department of Labor to adopt the occupations already vetted and listed and identified by the United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship in its annual occupations listing. In addition, the bill allows the Director of Department of Labor to hold public hearings should he or she choose to do so with regard to this listing to get additional community input. And if at whatever time, as with everything that we do here in the legislature, if we find that this is barring public input or not enough public input was allowed in the process, we can always come back and provide oversight over Department of Labor and ask them to please be a little bit more open in their process. We can certainly work with them. But it's my understanding that to this point, we haven't had any of those issues the last several years. Many of the same folks come to this public meeting, and frankly, not much input has been given over the past several years. And so they've all come together and asked that we streamline this process to not allow the 45-day waiting period, to just allow the Director of Department of Labor to do his job. Sujus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Perez, will that suffice?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to offer an amendment. I don't have it ready right now, but I think it's important to balance the needs of streamlining and transparency in the governance of this. And I would like to at least have some time to work on that amendment. Unless we can set...
While you're working on that amendment, Senator Perez, I'll go ahead and proceed with the Legislative Secretary so you can work on that amendment.
Okay.
In the interest of time. So
Masi,
I'll
Madam
come back
Speaker.
to you.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Legislative Secretary, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of Bill 128-35 as a co-sponsor. I'd like to thank the author of the bill, and in advance our colleagues who have expressed their support and who will support this bill. I think that we cannot stress enough how we have a need here on Guam for training and for opportunity, that we have these positions that we need to fill, and due to our isolation here, being a small island in the middle of the Pacific, we really do have a need for home-trained employees and to build our workforce. And where better to do it than here at home, by giving the opportunity to these companies to partner with us to bring these opportunities to our people. This morning, I was fortunate enough to attend the start of a boot camp training program at the University of Guam for ship repair apprentices. This is a pre-apprentice boot camp that over 100 young people applied for, and only 20 were chosen to go through a rigorous training program so that they can become apprentices and have a guaranteed job right after. It's programs like these that we need to continue to promote and show our people that we want to give them the opportunity, that we want to put them to work, and that we want to train them to improve our workforce. I also want to mention that I'm very appreciative that in the bill, the committee included more occupations so as to be more inclusive of women, which was suggested by our Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. The Women's Chamber of Commerce stated in their testimony the emphasis on industrial, construction, and technical trades and occupations, which are outdated, and there is also a strong need for medical coding and billing, finance, accounting, website coding and development, office technology, and human resource development. These are things that we've seen a disparity of men to women in the workforce. And while we can all agree that women can do any job a man can do, the U.S. Department of Labor recognizes that there are skews in certain industries. Only 1% of HVAC or refrigeration mechanics and installers are females, whereas 74% of human resource managers are female. Studies time and again have shown that reducing barriers to women in the workforce increase marketable output gains in the economy overall and significantly increase general welfare gains in a community, according to the International Monetary Fund. I want to also recognize organizations like the Guam chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction, who have helped us see as a community the viability of women in these fields, that they have been making their mark and showing that as women we can participate in any activity, that we can serve in any role and do just as good of a job as our male counterparts. I also appreciate that we are concurrently considering the minimum wage increase and the continuation of this apprenticeship program, because both work together to lift the lives of our people. Increasing the minimum wage helps our working families that struggle to get by, while the apprenticeship program here provides opportunities for people to get the training necessary to better support their families. We lift up our people who are struggling, and we give them an opportunity to train for a better life. I think it's important for us as people who work directly in our government to recognize that we have limitations. The government has limitations, and that we work together to be innovative, to partner with these private companies who want to help, who want to lend a hand and provide these opportunities as well. So I want to thank our business community who has come out strong in support, who has been really the backbone of this apprenticeship program. I want to thank the senators who, as were mentioned before, had the foresight to see the benefit of a program like this, and of course the sponsor who provided this legislation so that we can continue with such a valuable program. So Dios Masi, Madam Speaker.
Hagu Mas, Buen Provecho, Legislative Secretary Shelton. On the main motion, anyone else wishing to speak? We're going to take a minute's recess. y mina 35 na legislatura in Guahan's back from recess. Senator Paris, I know you had some amendments. Have they been passed out?
Suzuki Masi, Madam Speaker, I do have one amendment. It's to restore the original language of the introduced bill. It's on page 6, line 10. It's to basically restore that section to section 10104. It reads, the director shall then submit the occupational list to Imagahaga and Guahan for approval. Imagahaga shall then submit the occupational list to the Legislature in Guahan no later than January 5th of each year, provided, however, that no program participant shall request a tax credit for new trade until the list is approved by Legislatura. If Legislatura has not expressly approved or rejected the list or any part thereof by resolution within 30 days after submission, the list shall be deemed approved. So the only part that I changed was I decreased the amount of days from 45 to 30 days. Otherwise, the original language is restored.
Thank you, Senator Paris. On the amendment, anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? Is there an objection? There's an objection. Would you care to speak, Senator Lee? You're more than welcome. Please proceed.
Suzuki Masi, Madam Speaker, I certainly appreciate the concern and also the consistency from my colleague regarding this matter and in all matters that we try to be as transparent as possible and try to allow for reporting requirements and the like. But I think the emphasis that I'd like to place here is just that this is an attempt on our part, together with the Department of Labor and our stakeholders that attended the public hearing, to just streamline a year-long process. And this, the reason why we decided to eliminate this language is really to allow the Department of Labor, the director and the Department of Labor team to more easily respond to the fluctuating and changing nature of our industries, and so that they can be as responsible as possible, as responsive as possible to our growing needs. And we really need a process that recognizes that our island and our economy is constantly changing, and so the needs of our workforce changes as well. And we need to give them the flexibility to be able to maintain those changes. It also will mean a longer wait time for employees and employers that so desperately need this training. The longer that we wait to have an approved list, the longer it'll take for somebody who wants to train up in a construction job or a baker's job or possibly in information technology, for them to train up, get that on-the-job training, and then be qualified for that higher paying job. And I don't want to limit anybody's growth, and I don't want to slow down that process. And so with that, Madam Speaker, I object to this amendment.
Jesus Masi, Senator Lee, anybody else on the amendment? Senator Therese, I will recognize you now.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the amendment. I think that the amendment is going to restore to the law, or restore the law to its original language, language that was not proposed to be amended in the original version of this bill. So it was amended in committee, but it would just it really just allows that this list, which is already, at the discretion of the director, it would allow that list be transmitted to the governor. And I've looked at the other lists that have been transmitted, and most recently it's been signed by our new governor, so I don't think there's an issue there. And I think that it is good that there is as much transparency in this process as possible, because while we're following Federal Department of Labor guidelines or apprentice programs, we still are, by this law, mandating certain things be prioritized, or at least be emphasized, I think is what the language says. And so I just think in order for us to be informed, that it's good that this information be sent down here, and that we we can see that there's a public hearing on it. And despite, this is the same way that priority lists for scholarships at UOG, like for example, the ProTech, the priority list of careers that we are going to fund by ProTech is done in a very similar fashion where they're required to have a public hearing so that the committee can give input. And they would say that for many years there's been no input or very little input, but I still think that it's a very important process because we can acknowledge that construction demand has not changed, but we have seen that there are different areas that have changed. So I support that process, Madam Speaker. And the process really sets it out for a year, or it requires that they send this down every year. So I think that's fair, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Si Jus Masi, anybody else on the amendment? If not, Senator Sabina, you can close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's an African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think by restoring the original language, this ensures that the government works in a coordinated fashion. And I see that by reducing the checks and balances, by removing this original language, it opens up the possibility where there could be contentions within government, which could eventually slow down the process. So I think by restoring transparency in this bill, it would help defray that, or at least that would limit those limit that that circumstance. I think what I accept with the amendments of this bill, it allows for the ability of the Department of Labor to really streamline the process. So if you look at the section, the previous section, I'm sorry, the earlier part of this section, 10104, where it allows the director of the Department of Labor to be able to at least create a preliminary list without the need for a public hearing. I think that's where the compromise is that they can receive input from the community. But I think in the whole, so in a way, it is streamlining the process, and I do, that's why I withdrew my other amendment. I feel that it does strike a balance where we are streamlining the process, but at the same time, we are restoring the transparency and the governance that's needed in law. The fact that the argument that was made that there is not much public participation should not really be an argument to remove this measure, because in the cases where there are contentions, at least the community through the governor and through the legislature has this opportunity to at least have some sort of feedback, where in the cases where potentially an apprentice program may not be up to par or may not be politically accepted, I think at least it allows for some sort of transparency. So I think by restoring this is an important thing. So I do, and in fact, I do strike a compromise because I do lessen the amount of days from 45 to 30 days. So by doing this, it does strike a balance, I feel. And in no way does this limit the capacity of this bill to expand the apprenticeship programs, which is really needed for Guam. So, Ms. Masi.
You're very welcome, Senator Paris. Colleagues, there has been an objection. All those in favor of the Senator Sabina Paris amendment, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Bisco-Lee, you can close.
Sudos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I again just want to thank my colleagues for their input on this bill. I very much appreciate the concerns that were raised and also the support for this measure. Madam Speaker, at this time, I'd like to proffer an amendment to line 6, page 6, and I believe it's been circulated by our clerk staff. And this is just to add the words agriculture and aquaculture to this listing of approved occupations for our apprenticeship programs. And so the new language should read, the director shall also consider new program participant applications and agreements as they are submitted for review and shall emphasize occupations in the fields of Chamorro cultural practices, human resources development, office technology, medical coding and billing, information technology, website coding and development, finance and accounting, cosmetology, automotive, engineering, agriculture and aquaculture, as well as industrial work, construction, and technical trades. And Madam Speaker, I'd just like to proffer this amendment. Again, this is to amend Section 2 of the bill, subsection 10104, to add agriculture and aquaculture.
On the amendment, Senator Therese, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to ask a question, if the author would yield. The question is whether this list of occupations that we are adding, which are now being amended to include agriculture and aquaculture, are occupations or fields that are already listed on the U.S. Department of Labor occupation listing, apprenticeship
Senator
listing.
Regine, would you like to yield?
Yes, ma'am, and I thank the retiring speaker for a question. Depending on the year, some of these listings will be on the list or fall off the list, but I just want to make sure that we emphasize them for our local community. And I'm certain that Chamorro cultural practices would not be on the US DOL listing. So again, this is an emphasis for our local community. We feel that these are the much needed areas or industries that need a little bit more attention and certainly need more skilled labor. And so that's the reason why we wanted to ensure that it's included in the law.
Thank you to the author for yielding, Madam Speaker. And I guess it just raises for me a question of whether, if these are priorities that are being set, are they priorities, because the law currently says industrial, construction, and technical trades. Oh, let me just make sure. Yes, that, and shall emphasize industrial, construction, and technical trades and occupations. And now we are listing these other occupations and saying we shall emphasize these. And this really wasn't the focus of the public hearing, although there was at least one testimony where they stated what they thought the priorities would be. And I agree that these priorities may be very helpful, but I don't think we gave an opportunity for all of these businesses to say that these are indeed the priorities for Guam. So I would like to know, how does this list now compare to the list that the Department of Labor on Guam has submitted as their priority list?
So
If the author would yield, Madam Speaker.
I will ask her. Thank you, Senator Therese. Would you like to yield on that, Senator Lee, based on the inquiry?
We can certainly, Madam Speaker, we can certainly provide that listing to our colleagues. My committee can certainly do that, but I don't have that listing in front of me.
Thank you. Senator Therese.
All right, well, like I said, from my layman's view or from my view here, I see no objection to this list. But if we are departing from what the Guam Department of Labor has already decided with input from the public as to what the priorities are, I'm just a little concerned about that, but I guess we're going to hear about it if this bill's passed, if that is a concern. Hopefully it's not, because these look reasonable to me, but Madam Speaker, but it seems to be, yeah, I would like to have that comfort that of knowing that these are actually already on the list, except for, of course, the cultural practices, that these are already on the list of priorities for the Guam Department of Labor. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cito Osmasi, Senator Therese. On the amendment, anyone else wishing to speak? If not, would you like to close? On the motion, on the amendment, is there any objection? If not, motion carries. Senator Lee, you still have the floor to close.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at this time, I just want to take the opportunity to certainly thank my colleagues, especially my colleagues who've signed on as co-sponsors. I'd like to thank all of those who participated in our public hearing. Again, we had groups like the Guam Women's Chamber, Guam Construction, GCA, the Guam Contractors Association, as well as groups like GHRA, and actually, people who've gone through this apprenticeship program, and they've been able to give us their testimony about how life-changing it's been, how it's given them the opportunity to provide for their families. And that really goes to the heart of this bill, Madam Speaker. It's giving our community the opportunity to step up, to level up, to be able to not just set a goal, but work with their employer to reach that goal and then be eligible for a higher paid position. That's what we want, Madam Speaker. We certainly want them to, establish their dreams and then work hard to achieve those dreams. And I think that this bill certainly helps to do that. We want to, again, I just want to emphasize that this is a win-win-win for our community. It's a win for employers, it's a win for employees and wage earners, and it's also a win for the government and our economy. So we're certainly trying to build that, Madam Speaker. It's really important that we move forward with that spirit. And I just want to reiterate and emphasize that Bill 128, we're extending this program, and it was a good program to start with. But a lot of the changes in the bill allows this program to go from good to great. And so again, I just want to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Shelton, Senator Camacho Torres, Senator Castro. And at this time, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to add you, Speaker Tina Munia Barnes, our Vice Speaker, Senator Nelson, and Senator Therese Terlahi, who've all stood in support of this measure. I'd like to add them on as co-sponsors as well.
Thank you, Cito Osmasi, Senator Lee. On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. On the motion to put it on third reading file, Senator Lee, on the motion to put it on the voting file, please.
I apologize, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move at this time to place Bill 128-35 into the third reading
File, a voting file without any objection. Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 4:45. Vice Speaker, Majority Leader Nelson, you are recognized at this time.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion that we recess till 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Cito Osmasi, on that motion, we are in recess to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Cito Osmasi, have a good night, colleagues.